The morning light filtered softly through the beige curtains of the small apartment in downtown Chicago. Margaret Weaver stood by the kitchen window, her frail hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug, steam curling into the air. She watched as the world outside moved on. Buses huffed to their stops, children in bright jackets darted across streets, and joggers passed by with earbuds tucked in and purpose in their stride. She was 68 now. The years had not been cruel, but they hadn't been kind either. Her once black hair had surrendered to waves of silver, her spine slightly curved from decades of labor. But her eyes remained alert, gentle, kind, and searching. In the next room, Jason was already dressed in a tailored navy suit. He glanced at his watch, sighing. "I've got a conference call at 10. Do we have any coffee left?" Margaret moved quietly to the counter, pouring the last of the pot into his travel mug. "Here, sweetheart. You really should eat something too." "I'll grab something later," he muttered, grabbing the cup. He didn't meet her eyes. Jason had changed. Or maybe Margaret thought she had simply fallen behind. As a boy, he had clung to her skirts, hiding from the world, eyes wide with wonder and fear. She had been everything then. His protector, his cheerleader, his provider. She remembered standing in line at the soup kitchen during the worst of it, holding his small hand, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. But she had kept them all. She sold their home to help him through college. Took out loans under her name so he could buy his first apartment. Skipped her medication to make sure he never missed a semester's tuition. She didn't regret a single thing. But these days, he barely looked at her. She sat at the kitchen table as he slung his laptop bag over his shoulder. "Jason," she said gently, "would it be too much if we had dinner together tonight? Just you and me. It's been a while." He paused. "Tonight? I have a client dinner. Maybe next week." She nodded. "Maybe Sunday? We'll see," he said, already halfway out the door. The silence that filled the apartment after he left wasn't new. Margaret had grown used to it. She spent her days reading, tidying, and volunteering at the church across the street. But there was a dull ache she couldn't shake, not physical, but emotional, like an old song playing in the background of every moment. That evening, she reheated leftovers, just in case. He didn't come home until past midnight. She heard the door open, keys clatter on the counter, and the dull thud of expensive shoes on the floor. She stepped out of her room. "You didn't eat," she said softly. Jason flinched. "Jesus, Mom, you scared me." "I'm sorry," she said. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine," he snapped. "Can we not do this now? I've had a hell of a day." Margaret hesitated, but the worry cracked through her restraint. "Jason, I barely see you anymore. We live in the same home, and yet I feel like I'm in the way. Like I'm just some burden you carry around." Jason threw his hands in the air. "Oh my God. Again with this? You think I'm not doing enough? I gave you this place to live, didn't I? This place was bought with the money She stopped herself. "No, say it. Go ahead. With the money you gave me. That's what this is about, huh?" She shook her head, tears in her eyes. "That's not it. I just miss you. I miss my son." Something in him broke. "You know what, Mom," he said, voice rising, eyes flashing. "I'm tired of this guilt trip. You act like you're the only one who's sacrificed. Newsflash, I work my ass off every day. And you? You just sit here waiting for me to give you attention like some pet. I'm done." "Jason," she whispered. "No. Just die, I don't give a shit." The words landed like glass shattering on tile. He stared at her, breathing heavily, chest rising and falling. Her face didn't change. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just nodded. That night, when Jason stumbled into his room and collapsed into bed, he didn't hear the soft closing of a suitcase. Didn't hear the final locking of a door. Didn't feel the chill that would settle in by morning. He would only know that she was gone when the sun rose, and everything felt different. Jason sat in the dim kitchen the next morning, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The apartment was unusually quiet. No rustling sounds from the living room. No hum of the old vacuum cleaner. No gentle clatter of plates. He called out once. "Mom." Silence. Her door was ajar. Her bed was made. Her few clothes in the shared closet were gone. On the nightstand sat her reading glasses and a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, the spine bent, the bookmark gone. Jason checked the kitchen counter. No note. He stood there for a long time, feeling the weight of the silence pressing against his chest. He tried to convince himself she had gone to visit someone. The church. Maybe an old friend. But by nightfall, when there was still no sign of her, his stomach turned. He texted. Called. Voicemail. 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 Day 3. He called the hospitals. The police. Nothing. He tried her old phone book, the one she kept under the TV stand, filled with names written in cursive. He called her friend June, her old neighbor from Evanston, even the priest from her former parish. No one had seen or heard from her. Then he found the letter. Tucked between the pages of her Bible. It was short and handwritten. To love unconditionally is to accept absence as deeply as presence. I am not gone out of anger, but out of necessity. Your mother. He sat on the edge of her bed, the letter trembling in his hands. The apartment felt haunted. In the weeks that followed, Jason's life unraveled quietly. He went to work, yes, but his performance dropped. He forgot meetings. He skipped client calls. He grew short with his assistant. He couldn't sleep. He started dreaming of her, Margaret sitting at the window, smiling sadly, always just out of reach. One afternoon, he stopped by the apartment early, hoping maybe, just maybe, she'd be there. But it was still empty. Only dust and folded laundry, and the faint smell of rose hand cream. Jason looked around and saw for the first time what he'd never noticed. The worn armrest she'd stitched herself. The pictures of him as a boy, taped to the fridge door. A calendar with every day marked with notes, Jason dinner, remind Jason doctor appointment, Jason's big pitch. She had built her days around him. He sank to the floor and wept. And still, she didn't come back. The guilt became a quiet background noise to everything. He couldn't laugh without hearing her voice. Couldn't eat without remembering the meals she'd made. Couldn't walk past a church without thinking of how she used to sing under her breath when cooking. A month passed. And for the first time in his life, Jason realized he wasn't afraid of being alone. He was afraid he might have lost the only person who ever truly loved him, and there might be no way back. The first rail lead came from an unlikely place, the church office Margaret had volunteered at for years. Jason had driven past it countless times since her disappearance, each time feeling the sting of guilt like salt in an open wound. On a rainy Wednesday afternoon, something inside him finally broke past the hesitation. He stepped out of his car, walked up the slick church steps, and pushed open the heavy wooden doors. The air inside was warm, faintly scented with beeswax candles and old hymnals. Clarice, the church secretary with tightly curled hair and a lavender scarf, looked up in surprise. Jason Weaver, she said, her voice part question, part concern. We've been worried about Margaret. She left so suddenly. Jason swallowed, his voice rasping with disuse. I need to find her. Please. Clarice searched his face for a long moment, then nodded. She left something behind. Told Pastor Emmett it was for you if you ever came. An hour later, Jason found himself in the pastor's cramped office, staring at a worn envelope with his name written in Margaret's precise handwriting. The contents were few: a brochure for a senior retreat center in rural Wisconsin, and a handwritten note on yellow stationery. If ever he comes looking, I'll be somewhere the wind still whispers gently, and where forgiveness grows quieter than grief. Mom. Jason stared at the note until the letters blurred. He drove out the next morning. The road to Wisconsin unfurled like a path through memory. Silos and barns dotted the landscape. Cows moved slowly across distant fields, and the radio stayed off the entire trip. With every mile, he rehearsed apologies, scenarios, desperate hopes. Would she slam a door in his face? Would she even speak to him? The retreat center was nothing like he expected. Tucked between a still lake and rolling woods, it looked more like a farmhouse than a facility. A red-painted wooden sign read, Windmere Haven, where hearts rest. Inside, the staff welcomed him with measured warmth. A woman named Ruth checked a ledger, then smiled. Margaret Weaver? Yes, she's here. Room 12. She spends mornings in the art studio. I'll take you. The hallway they walked down smelled faintly of linseed oil and lavender. On the walls, residents' artwork adorned the space: sunsets, still lives, abstract splashes of bright color. Jason's heart pounded with each step. Ruth pushed open a door to a spacious, light-filled room where easels stood in a circle. Seniors painted and chatted softly. At the far end of the room, with a brush in one hand and her sleeves rolled up, stood Margaret. Jason almost didn't recognize her. She looked thinner, smaller, but peaceful. She was guiding an elderly man's hand, helping him blend shades of blue. She looked up. Their eyes met. Time suspended. Her hand stilled, her expression unreadable, calm, perhaps, but not surprised. As if she'd always known he would come. She whispered something to the man beside her and handed off the brush. Slowly, she made her way to him, her posture upright, composed. "Hello, Jason," she said softly. The words struck like thunder in his chest. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear her voice. "Can we talk?" he asked. She nodded. "Let's go outside." They walked to a bench overlooking the lake, its surface shimmering with the reflection of bare-limbed trees. Geese moved in the distance, their wings stirring ripples. For several long minutes, neither spoke. Jason finally broke the silence. "I looked everywhere. I didn't sleep. I haven't been okay." Margaret's eyes stayed on the lake. "I know. I said terrible things," he choked. "Things I'll never forgive myself for." She turned slightly to look at him. "Jason, I forgave you the moment you said them." He stared at her, stunned. "But forgiveness," she continued, "isn't a key that opens the same old door. It's a soft light on a different path. I want you to come home." "That apartment doesn't feel like home anymore," she replied gently. "Home isn't walls or addresses. It's where you feel safe, where you're seen." He looked down at his hands. "I didn't see you." "Not really. Not for years." "No, you didn't," she said. "And I let you not see me. That's on both of us." He looked up. "But I want to do better. I've changed. Or I'm trying." She reached out, placed a hand on his. It was warm, steady. "Then let that be the beginning. Not for me. For you." Jason's tears fell silently. "I don't deserve you." Margaret smiled, sad and proud at once. "Deserving has nothing to do with love. But safety? Respect? Kindness? Those matter." He asked, almost childlike, "Can I see you again?" "In time," she said. "When seeing me isn't about fixing guilt but sharing peace." The wind rustled the trees. Jason closed his eyes, breathed in the cold, clean air. They sat there for another hour. She didn't lean on him, didn't hug him, but she stayed. And for the first time in weeks, Jason felt something that wasn't guilt or sorrow. He felt grace. Jason didn't drive back to Chicago that day. Instead, he checked into a small inn 2 miles down the road from Windmere Haven. It was an old place, with creaky floors and no television. But the stillness felt right. That night, he sat by the window with a cup of chamomile tea and tried to write. Not for work. Not to prove anything. Just to talk to her. He started with a letter. "Dear Mom, I can't ask you to come back. I don't deserve to ask. But I want you to know what I've been too blind to say. Thank you. For your silence and your noise. For every small, invisible thing you ever gave up to make me stronger. And for leaving when I needed to understand what I'd become." He wrote for hours, pages filled with memories, apologies, confessions. He didn't know if he would ever send them. Maybe that wasn't the point. The next morning, Jason returned to Windmere Haven, not to see her, but to volunteer. He spent the day helping in the garden, planting winter bulbs alongside residents. One of them, a cheerful man named Walter, mistook him for a new staff member and talked his ear off about birdwatching. Jason listened. Really listened. Margaret saw him from a distance and nodded. That was all. But it was enough. In the weeks that followed, Jason changed. Back in Chicago, he declined a lucrative promotion and instead started a small real estate initiative focused on senior housing and accessibility. He named the program the Weaver Project. He moved to a modest apartment near the lake. One night, he found himself standing in front of a church, just like the one his mother once attended. This time, he didn't just walk past. He joined a support group for estranged families. He shared his story, haltingly at first, then with conviction. Others cried with him. Some hugged him. One woman whispered, "Your mother sounds like the kind of person who saved my life once." Time passed, quietly and steadily. Each week, Jason mailed a letter to Margaret. He never asked her to come back. He just told her who he was becoming. And one day an envelope came in return. Inside was a single photograph. Jason as a boy, maybe 6 years old, wearing oversized rubber boots and holding a paper daisy he'd made. Margaret stood beside him, smiling, one hand on his shoulder. On the back, she'd written, "Still my boy. Still blooming." Spring returned to Wisconsin in gentle waves of green. Jason visited Windmere again, this time with no expectations. He found Margaret beneath a cherry tree, painting. She looked up. "You came," she said, surprised. "I didn't want to," he smiled. "I needed to." She gestured to the bench beside her. "Sit, then." They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. He handed her a thermos of tea. She poured them each a cup. As they sipped, petals drifted onto the table between them. "I never stopped loving you," Jason said. "I know," Margaret replied, "but love without reflection can still hurt." "I see that now." She looked at him for a long moment, then said, "I'm proud of who you're becoming." It was the closest she'd come to saying she forgave him again. But Jason understood. This wasn't about getting her back. It was about learning how to live with integrity, even if the damage couldn't be undone. That afternoon, he joined the art class. He was terrible at it. His tree looked more like a broccoli floret. But when Margaret leaned over, chuckling, and added a few gentle brushstrokes to his canvas, it felt like a handshake across a chasm. Years later, when Margaret passed, she left no will, no property, only a box of letters tied with twine and a note that read, "Tell your story, so no one else forgets what love costs and what it gives back." Jason published a memoir entitled The Wind Still Whispers. It didn't make him rich, but it found hearts across the country, sons, mothers, caretakers, wanderers. He often ended his book talks with these words. Sometimes our worst moment becomes someone else's lifeline, and sometimes the person we hurt most is the one who still teaches us how to become whole again. Jason never remarried, but he lived surrounded by friends, volunteers, letters from strangers. And every spring, he planted a cherry tree in a new place, public parks, senior homes, even highways. He never forgot the bench, the lake, the grace. He never stopped writing. Because some stories deserve to keep whispering long after the words, "I'm sorry,"